Welcome to Political News and Views with your host, Congressman Ed Towns of Brooklyn, New York, representing the 10th Congressional District, programming with your concerns in mind.
Committee will come to order. Who is watching the backs of the American people to preserve and create jobs?
And now, your host, Congressman Ed Towns.
Welcome to News and Views. I'm delighted today to have with me David C. Banks, a person that is known for his involvement in the community, known for his involvement in education. You know, generally when you have someone of your stature on, I really read their bio and sort of let people know in terms of, yes, he went to school, yes, he did this and that. Sure. But, you know, I would like for you to just tell our listeners about your background, your educational background, where you grew up, and how you got involved in education.
Sure. Well, Congressman Towns, thank you so much for the invitation to join you today. I'm a product of New York City, born and raised. My mom and dad raised 3 sons in New York. I'm the oldest of 3. I lived in Brooklyn until I was about 13 years old in Crown Heights, and then my family moved out to Queens. I graduated from Hillcrest High School, went off to Rutgers University in New Jersey, and then came back to go to St. John's Law School. But while I was in law school, I actually started teaching during the day. And I loved teaching, and I was a teacher for 6 years in Brooklyn. And from there, went back to school to actually become an administrator, and was a New York City high school principal for 11 years, founding principal of 2 different high schools, and the last of which was the Eagle Academy for Young Men, the first all-boys public high school in New York City in more than 30 years.
Yeah, how did you get the idea about Eagle? And I know you have one in Brooklyn as well. We want to talk about that a little bit in a moment. But the point is that how did you get involved in all-boys school? I mean, did you sort of feel that if you had an all-boys school that they would learn better? I mean, just talk about that for a moment.
You know, it's interesting. Very often I'm referred to as the founder of the school. That's actually not correct. I'm not the founder. The founding organization for the Eagle Academy is the 100 Black Men of New York.
Right.
And I've been a member for many, many years of the organization. And, you know, the organization has always provided leadership in the community, provided scholarships and mentored young people. But when we recognize just how deep this crisis is in our community, particularly with our young men who don't graduate from high school and find themselves incarcerated, we realized that we needed to do more than we had always been doing. And that was what really was what gave birth to the idea of creating a school that the 100 Black Men could really take ownership of. And that's when we created the first school in the Bronx. And it's a school in which we prepare our young men for character development, leadership. We provide mentors to those young men, and we expect for each and every one of them to graduate and to go to college. And it's been very, very successful, so much so that the city asked us to replicate, and we opened our 2nd school in Brownsville, and we opened our 3rd school just last year in Southeast Queens.
Right. Let me, have you been able to follow up on any of the students that have graduated from Eagle?
We've graduated now 4 classes since the Eagle Academy has opened. We're graduating almost 90% of our young men. In a city where the graduation rate for African American and Latino males is below 50%, we're graduating almost 90%. And so we've doubled the citywide average. More than 95% of our young men who graduate go on to college. And what we found is that 84% of them have been maintaining their stay in college, which is well above the national average for retention. So it's a model that works. It's a model that gives young men a sense of hope, builds a fraternity and a spirit of brotherhood. These are young men who don't turn on each other, they turn to each other. And I have to tell you, they didn't intend to go to an all-boys school, many of them. They didn't like the idea of going to an all-boys school. Their parents wanted them to come to an all-boys school because they felt as though they could focus, their sons could focus and not, you know, have the other distractions that they might find in a co-ed school. But once the young men come, they get totally connected to the culture, and they stay focused, and they're the leaders that we're looking for.
Right. Let me ask you. You think you'd be able to put in the evaluation, or actually, I guess, a follow-up of the young people? You think you'd be able to do that for a period of time just to see what you really have here? Because you could be on to something that could change the lives of many, many people throughout this nation.
Oh, listen, we know that we're on to something. When we opened the school in New York, in the Bronx, it was the first all boys. There were no other all-boys public high schools in the country. Now there are 35. Almost all of those schools have come to visit the Eagle Academy in New York before they ever opened their doors. They studied the model, they saw how we did it, the kinds of pieces that we put in place to make the school successful. We've got a number of college professors who are doing research currently and have done research about the school. What's the secret sauce? Why is the school so successful? And so those studies are continuing to happen, but we know the impact. We've now created a national organization called the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color. This is a movement to save our sons, and the Eagle Academy right here in New York is in the forefront of that movement.
Do they wear uniforms?
They wear uniforms, shirts and ties. In fact, the young men wear a different tie in every grade. So if you're a 9th grader, you have to wear an Eagle tie, but the gold tie is for the seniors. And so it's a rites of passage. You know, if you're in 11th grade, you won't be caught wearing a 10th or 9th grade tie. So you have to earn your stripes, as they say. And those are the kinds of rituals that are very important for young men.
Let's look at this. Now, you get them in what grade?
Well, when we started the first school, we started at the 9th grade. But we realized very quickly that if we wanted to have a sustained level of success, you've got to start earlier than that. And so now our model is we start at the 6th grade, and we get them right as they come out of elementary school. We start at the 6th grade, and we take them all the way through. We tell them when they come to our school, this is the last school you will ever go to before you go to college.
Right. So, and they wear uniforms.
And they wear uniforms, yes.
Now, I noticed just recently, I read this in the paper, that where you were called to City Hall, and the mayor of the city gave you like $30 million, and some other folks contributed $30 million, and then they're reaching out to get others to, and then I understand that it would be a lump sum of over $100 million. What is that for?
Well, they didn't give it to me. But what they did was, they were really, Mayor Bloomberg, to his credit, was really inspired by the work that we're doing at the Eagle Academy, and realized that we needed to do more to change the trajectory for young men of color in New York City. So he asked me to co-chair this initiative that he called the Young Men's Initiative. So for over a year and a half, I worked with experts from around the city and around the country who shared some best practices and things that we could do to really begin to help young men, from becoming better fathers, employment opportunities, in mentoring, and how can we change the metrics within the Department of Education so that we have a greater focus on young men of color. And so just a couple of months ago, the mayor came out with a report. The mayor, to his credit, put up $30 million from his own foundation. And then he got George Soros, another multi-billionaire, to match it. Soros put up $30 million, the mayor put up $30 million, and then the city of New York put in $67 million. $127 million as a resource over a 3-year period to focus on various programs and employment opportunities for young men of color. I think the mayor is to be applauded for that.
I don't, no question about it. I think that it shows his real commitment to education. But let me just say that, you know, I know that some of my viewers will look at this and say, well, we're going to start a school.
Sure.
And we're going to start it. But the point is that, what are some of the things that you encountered that created problems for you along the way in terms of being able to move the school and get it going? What kind of problems did you encounter?
You know, it's really interesting that you asked that question. We really didn't have many challenges as we created the school. There was not a lot of resistance to it, to be quite honest with you. And I think it's because we had so many of our leaders from the 100 Black Men organization who stood up. We went directly to the mayor. He gave us his support. We met with our then Senator Hillary Clinton. She said, I'm behind you 100%. Our chancellor at the time, Joe Klein. Everyone said, you know, this is something that's needed. And the reality is that most people, even in education, really don't know how to engage young men of color. And yet nobody's putting a lot of pressure on them to do that. And so we stepped up as an organization of men to say we want to reclaim our sons, we want to get off the sidelines and get into this game. And so there wasn't a lot of resistance really to doing this work, because, and there's not a lot of competition for it either. Not a lot of people looking to sign up to say, what can we do to help young men of color, particularly at the high school age?
Let's talk about the sizes the size of these schools. You know, I'm one that feel that, you know, large schools create problems. You know what I mean? You know, that the principal of the school will not be able to know the names of all the children because the fact that school is big, and that if you really want success, you generally have to have a small school and even small classes. So
right.
What about the size of the schools and also the classes?
Yes, well, I completely agree. Having been an educator for over 20 years, you know, size of school really does matter, and making sure that all young people have a voice in that school, that they're known by someone so they don't slip through the cracks. So the Eagle Academy starts at grade 6, goes all the way through grade 12, and the maximum will grow to be a school of about 600 young men. And so we got 3 schools now. We've got over 1,000 young men. Eventually, between those 3 schools, we'll have about 1,800 young men. But we intend to create more schools throughout the city as well. Our plan is to create 7 schools in New York City, with each school having about 600 young men. So over 4,000 young men in New York to be served through this work that we're doing with Eagle. And what makes it so special is that we keep the young men after school. They spend an additional 2 to 3 hours with us. They're in school every Saturday for an additional 4 hours. And it's not just extra schoolwork. It's all the fun stuff as well. It's basketball, it's chess, it's robotic, debate, culinary arts. It's a boys' club. And they have an opportunity to really come together and as a fellowship. And those are the kinds of things that keep them interested in wanting to come to school. And those are the kinds of pieces that we've put in place.
You have athletics programs in the school?
We've got martial arts, we've got baseball, basketball, football, wrestling, lacrosse. That's why we have so many people applying now that the word is out. Our school in Brooklyn, as an example, for 100 seats for an incoming class, we had last year over 3,000 applications.
Wow.
That shows you the demand for people trying to get, because parents are looking for good programs for their sons. And in Eagle Academy, they found a high quality program that doesn't cost them anything. The only thing we ask of our parents is to be engaged. They've got to be very involved. We told them a lot of people out here who don't believe in their sons, and we want to make sure that we turn it on its head. But those same people don't believe in our parents. They don't think that our parents value education. And at Eagle Academy, if you intend to be a parent at Eagle Academy, we expect you to be very involved. Our former Chancellor Klein said we should write the book on parent involvement. There's probably no school in New York that has the level of parent engagement that we have at the Eagle Academies.
Right. If you have a parent-teachers meeting, what kind of turnout would you get?
Standing room only. At a regular parent association meeting, I'll give you an example. Just this past Saturday, at our school in the Bronx that has 600 young men, we had 540 families represented at our first parent association meeting of the year. Standing room only. And that's the way we have all of our meetings, because they all happen on Saturday mornings. We don't do any meetings on a Wednesday or Thursday night. It's too hard for parents to come out. They've got the family, they're working. But if you do it on a Saturday morning, we found that that's a huge part of success. And that's when we do it. We feed them, and they come out, and they're very involved.
Well, let me ask you, how do you get teachers to come on a Saturday morning? Because teachers work Monday through Friday.
The teachers who elect to come and work with us at Eagle Academy, and those who we select to be with us, they have bought into the mission of what this is all about. We told them this is not a regular job and this is not a regular school. We are doing mission work here, and we're trying to reclaim the lives of our young men. You know, there's a sense that, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats, and if we do some reform efforts within schools, you know, all the schools should get better. But the problem is that the schools with our young men are like a boat that has cement in it. And so we've got to remove that cement off of the boat in order for our young men to rise with the tide. And in order to do that, you have to have great teachers who are committed, who are just fired up, and we make sure that we find those kinds of teachers. Teachers that are not prepared to put in the kind of time that we're looking for, those are not the teachers that we want.
What's the process of selecting a teacher? You know, I didn't mean to tell you, you know, I taught for a little bit there, you know.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, in those days, yeah. But the point is that during that time, you had to take an exam.
Sure.
And once you know you passed the exam, and then you would they would send you to a school,
sure,
and you would teach. And if you didn't do well, then they would try in another school. And you know, how do you get your teachers?
Yeah, fortunately, some of those rules have changed. So no one is sent to a school now. If you are interested in a school, you have to be interviewed by the principal at that school and whoever he selects to be on his team. And I think that's the best way to go, because not everyone is a good fit for a particular type of school. So we're looking for certain types of educators with this kind of commitment. And that is really led by our principals at each one of our schools. We've got 3 dynamite men who are running our schools, and their mantra is, I won't hire anybody that I wouldn't put my own children in front of. And so because of the reputation of the school, we now get hundreds of applications from teachers who want to come and work at such a good school.
Right. Now, you're the co-chair of this new project. What does that really entail?
Well, now that it's been released, this Young Men's Initiative,
yes.
There are all types of strategies that have now been put in place that are going to help young men. So let me give you an example. One of the things that the city is doing with respect to employment is what they call ban the box. You know, young men who come out of jail who've ever been arrested at all, one of the first questions they're ever asked if they apply for a job is, have you been arrested? Well, from now on, in New York City, if you apply for a job through any city agency, you will not be asked that question, because we know that that question very often, if you answer yes, they're not even looking at the rest of your application. So now, when you apply for a job with a city agency, you will be able to go through a full process without that question ever being asked. And if they like you and they think you're a good fit, it'll come up at the end of the process, but it's not something that would eliminate you from the very beginning. So it gives the applicants a much better start and a greater opportunity to get that job. That's just one of the things that they've done. Within education, they're going to be providing mentors for young men in a host of different schools around New York City. So there's a whole host of different strategies that they put in place to enhance fatherhood, bring fathers closer to their families. You know, some of the rules that we have in place in the criminal justice system and have prevented fathers from being close to their children even when they want to. And so there are a number of those things that have been addressed in this plan.
What would you have, like a meeting, you know, in the school and bring in folks that you think that would be of a positive influence to the children? I mean, how could you do that? I mean, there's you have all these children, and of course you're looking for role models for them. You know, how do you select, you know, someone to come in, or is there a pool of people that want to assist, like from the 100 Black Men, or you reach out and get others? You know, young people love athletes.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's part of what's getting ready to happen now. The city, to start this program in the Department of Education, they've identified 40 high schools that they're going to start this work with, and they want various community-based organizations to adopt, if you will, one of these high schools or more, and work with this population of young men to try and lift their academic achievement and to get them on course. And so they're going to reach out to organizations like the Eagle Academy Foundation that I head, the 100 Black Men, and so many other organizations who are out there to get them involved in a very, very focused way around helping the development, affirmative development of these young men.
So the 100 Black Men is still involved in the Eagle Academy?
Oh, and 100 Black Men really not only involved, but they provide scholarships for our young men to go to college. They are mentoring our young men from the time that those young men enter our school. The members of the 100 Black Men, and not just the members, but there are just good men from the community we've asked to come in. So they may not even be members of the 100 Black Men, but the 100 Black Men coordinate the whole mentoring. They provide the training, they recruit the men who come in, and I will tell you, it's made a huge difference. We had one of our young men who coined it best. He said, a young man without a mentor is like an explorer without a map. And to see these young brothers, the way that they idolize the men who come in to show them the way, makes all the difference in the world.
Let's look at some of the things that you might run into along the way, because I'm thinking of others looking at this and saying, I want to start, you know, a school.
Sure.
Yeah. And you have twins. They apply for the school.
Right.
One is accepted, the other one is not.
Right.
Do you then at that point make an exception and bring in the other brother or other sister? Well, not the other sister, the other brother. Not the sister.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's interesting. We don't really have a lot to do at the school level with who gets into the school. It's essentially, it's a lottery that is controlled by the Department of Education. It's not a public lottery like the charter schools will do, where they spin the wheel and then pick your name out of the hat. That's not what happens. The Department of Education essentially controls who gets in. They have their own lottery system. And so they want to ensure that you're not cherry picking and just looking for the best and brightest boys. 25% of the young men who go to the Eagle Academy have some form of a special education background, or IEP as they call it. So there's no cherry picking here. But sometimes if you have an extenuating circumstance where you want to get both young men into the school, they can make an appeal to the Department of Education to make that happen.
Right, and then of course, then they probably would look at it and say, well, look, let's put both of them in here.
Probably so. We've not had that issue just yet,
yeah,
so,
well,
but it's probably coming.
Yeah, because sometimes there are triplets involved, you know. I mean, that kind of, I mean, you never can tell.
You never can tell. Sometimes
Right.
it's good to keep them together, and sometimes it's not. I have a set of twins myself, and sometimes they find their voice better when they're in their own space. And so, you know, those are individual decisions that have to be made at the appropriate times.
Right. Now, what about the discipline of teachers? Can you go through the same process that the regular schools go through in terms of if a person is not performing up to your standards, or for instance, a person is not tenured, you know, what do you do at that particular point in time?
Yep.
You don't transfer them to another Eagle school, do you?
No, we certainly don't do that. And in fact, if we've got teachers who we don't think should be teaching at all, then we either try to counsel them out of the profession because we don't think that they'd be good for kids anywhere. But sometimes people are just not a good fit at your particular school. But no, we are a regular, traditional public school. Most people hear Eagle Academy, they think we're a charter school. We are not. We're a traditional public school. And when we have teachers that we think are not sufficient, we have conversations, we document it, we go through the regular process. These teachers are all part of the unions and they've got their rights, and we respect that and we go through the process. The only downside I would say with that is that when you make a determination as a school leader that you've got a teacher who really is not cut out to do this work, you go through the process, but the process takes time. And unfortunately, you know, you can waste a whole year with an ineffective teacher. So that can be problematic. But for the most part at Eagle Academy, teachers who really don't want to work, they're not drawn to come to a place like ours.
Right. I mean, all boys school, you know, what are some of the advantages of an all boys school?
Yeah. Well, you remember the days when they had, you know, the old boys high in Brooklyn, and before it went co-ed, and Clinton High School in the Bronx, and the brothers who graduated from those schools, they speak with a great fondness of their days there, because it's a brotherhood that gets developed, you know, an opportunity where they don't have to put on airs. They're not there to try to show off for the girls. They can be very focused on their schoolwork and do what they have to do. And very often there's a voice that will be expressed when there are just other guys in the room. And listen, I don't think that single gender schools are a panacea, so I want to be very clear about that. We simply want it to be another option for those in our community who would elect to go to a school like that. Single gender schools are not for everybody, but for those who would like to go to those schools, you know, people of means and influence in this society, they maintain all of their options. We simply say that single gender should be an option for those who would elect to do it.
I know you have a plan. You generally have a long-term plan and you have a short-term plan. What is your short-term plan and what is your long-term plan for the school?
Our short-term plan, that's a great question. Our short-term plan is to continue to try and create more Eagle Academies to try and have an even greater impact. I think our long-term plan is to have a much more significant impact on Black and Latino males in New York City and around the country. And we're reaching a point now where we're doing conferences and professional development, where we can teach other schools our methods, how we've been so successful with our young men. At the end of the day, no matter how great our schools are, all young men in New York are not going to the Eagle Academy. So how can we impact those young men who are still struggling in the particular schools that they may go to? And so we're now positioning ourselves to do more training and helping other schools understand these are the things that you have to have in place in order to effectively meet the needs of young men of color. And that's our kind of long-term strategy, is to have a much more global impact by teaching a man how to fish, if you will.
Right. Let me ask, the other Eagle Academy schools, are they headed by someone that was actually trained within the first Eagle Academies?
Yes, they were. Yes. So we've got 3 schools, and before the principals could actually start, they have to spend time at our flagship schools and become really ingrained in just our culture and understand what the culture is, what our expectations are. And, you know, and it takes a while to fully absorb it because it's a lot. but our expectations are high. And we want to graduate every single one of our young men and see them go on to be successful. So yes, a big part of the training of our leaders is to spend time within our schools so that they understand clearly what our methods are and what our training is all about and what our mission is.
Now, you talked about after school and you talked about Saturday. After school, basically, what do they do? You know, after 3 o'clock when school is out everywhere else?
Sure.
And they're there after school.
It runs the whole gamut.
Yeah.
For those who need additional support in classes, we provide the additional support. So whether that's tutoring from a teacher or tutoring from one of their other classmates, you know, sometimes you may not do so well in math. You might be pretty good in science, but you may be struggling in math. And we'll get one of your classmates who's doing very well in math to support you so that you are also doing well, so you don't fall too far behind. So for those who need the extra support, we provide that. But most of what we do are our clubs and activities that create a real excitement. And those are the reasons why so many of our young men. So we've got a photography club. We've got culinary arts, teaching these young men how to cook. It's one of our most popular clubs. I would have never figured that, but one of the young men said, well, suggested it, we started it, and it's a club that's overflowing. We've got to figure out how to expand it because so many young men want to be part of that. But martial arts, the sports, you come to the school 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. It feels like a boys' club. There are so many things and activities that are going on. Music, art, teaching them the business of music. We bring in our guest speakers oftentimes on Saturdays. So between the after school and the Saturday mornings, it's just a whole potpourri of just activities and things that are going on.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for what you're doing. And I want to go on record right now saying that within the next 2 weeks, I do plan to visit the Eagle Academy in the borough of Brooklyn and to see what's going on there. You also have female teachers and male teachers,
yes.
And everything. It's the same as a regular
as any regular school. Black teachers, white teachers, male, female. We look for the best teachers that we can find.
Well, I want to salute you and say to you that we really appreciate what you're doing because education is just so important.
Yes,
and that we talk about how important it is, but many times we don't demonstrate it.
Yes.
So I'm happy to know that the Eagle Academy, under your leadership, is actually demonstrating it. And whatever I can do to be supportive, I want you to know you can count on me. Thank you so much for being on News and Views. What a delight to have you. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
It's a delight.
Thank you.